So I can't finish up this gear talk section without talking about the very last thing in the signal chain, the thing that honestly I think is overlooked the most when it comes to how good or bad things can sound. Because it's honestly usually one of those things where it's bought without much purpose or thought behind it. The price is kind of the biggest driver. The look of it can sometimes be that. It's just kind of underthought about what really needs to be important when it comes to picking a PA system. PA systems, honestly, are one of the most important parts of your sound. You see, a good speaker sounds good and a bad speaker sounds bad. It doesn't matter what you put through that speaker, that's going to change how good or bad it sounds. If you have a great sounding mix on your headphones because you've done all your EQ and gating properly, you've got great compression, all your sound sources on stage are amazing. If you pump it through some really terrible speakers, well, it's not going to sound good. You can't fix that. So good quality speakers and knowing the right type of speakers to have for your room and for your space are really important. So what kind of speakers are out there? Well, there's two main kinds of speakers that you're going to see. There's point source and line array. Now, if you're in a really small church, maybe you're even just setting up at a coffee shop or you're a portable church, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be using point source style speakers. Point source style speakers are exactly what they sound like. You point the speaker at where people are going to be so they can hear it. It's as simple as that. Now, point source speakers have a lot of pros and a couple cons. Point source speakers are great because they're usually a lot cheaper than line array systems. There's a lot less speakers needed to make them work. And they're really easy to set up usually because it's just plop it on the stand, aim it where it needs to be, and you're good to go. Now, the problem with point source speakers is that they're good at filling the room, but it's just this radiating sound source. It's not actually hitting everyone equally. So people up in the front are going to hear a much louder and more direct mix than someone who's sitting in the far back. So how do you reach people in the back with point source speakers? Well, you either turn it up more, you try and fly the speaker higher up or get it into a place where it makes more sense, or you have to start working in delay speakers where you're putting more point source speakers out into the crowd and delaying it to compensate it for the time delay from that first speaker to the delayed speaker so they line up correctly. And that can just get really messy. So what's the alternative? Well, line array speakers are the alternative. Now, line array speakers are going to be a medium to large size church purchase because they're expensive. There's just no getting around it. They're expensive. And the reason is because it takes multiple speakers per side. And I'm assuming here you're doing a stereo left, right. It takes multiple boxes per side to make a line array. It's not just a single speaker box on each side, it's multiple. And the reason why is because of the whole purpose of line arrays, and that is to create kind of zones, if you will, as you go further back into the room, where each speaker kind of covers a zone of audience. And the deeper your audience goes, the more boxes you're usually going to have. Think about when you go to, say, a festival or a big concert in an arena. Those big, long stacks of speakers, those are all trying to do the job that one point source speaker would normally do, but they're doing it together and they're actually able to focus the sound where it needs to go. And a lot of times they'll even like dial in per speaker to kind of say, hey, the front row here needs this level, but the back row, we've got a far reach to go. So we need to give more power to it so we can reach further. And also, we noticed that because of how far they are away from everything, they need a little bit brighter mix. So we're going to crank the high end up a little bit more for them. Line arrays give a lot more clarity and control for your system to make sure that every seat in the house sounds great. So which speaker type is best for you then? Point source or line array? Well, I can't speak into everyone's specific situation because everyone's sound space is so different. Everyone has this unique challenge that they're trying to overcome. Here's what I can say. If you're a church that's just getting started, or you've only been going for a couple of years, you're in a small space, you don't have a big audience that needs to hear everything, and maybe your stage is small, point source is probably going to be your best choice. They're inexpensive usually, and they're really easy to work with. There's not a lot of work needed to make them sound good. Now, if you're in a medium to large size space, you've been around for a while, and you're looking for how to upgrade your sound to really be the top level, line array is going to be where it's at. Line array is going to be a much better sounding system. It's going to be an easier system to disperse the sound correctly to where it needs to be and get it out of the places it doesn't need to be. Because you see point sources, are going to radiate and hit every wall and every surface, versus a line array, it's like a laser. It only hits the points that you mark it at. So figure out what kind of space you're in, what your requirements are when it comes to the style of system you need between a point source and line array. And then let's jump into the next section where we talk about the difference between passive and active speakers.